Good evening and welcome to SIMRACERS Revival, the F1 1984 series. I'm your host Neil Wood and I'm going to be taking you through 40 laps of racing around the Buenos Aires circuit in Argentina with these lovely 1984 cars, turbos naturally aspirated, lovely sounding machines. So 40 laps around this Buenos Aires circuit. I believe this is number 15 because they are numbered in the layouts. Number 15 is the one we're going to be using. And let's check out some of the details that we've got for this series. So we're going to be using the F1 1984 cars. It is a mixture of turbos and naturally aspirated, and they do have a couple of fuel modes. You do have the option to turn up the engine, which does make you go faster, but the fuel consumption is a little bit more on that mode. You do have the race mode, which is a little bit slower, but fuel consumption is a little bit better with that mode on. So drivers are going to have to be switching that around and playing tactically on when they want to use it. Filling up the tank, maybe putting in a little bit of extra fuel so they can use a little bit more turbo. Naturally aspirated engines obviously don't have that, so they will have a different fuel consumption. So it's all tactics at the end of the day. So as far as tyres as well, they do have different compounds available to the drivers tonight. We won't, I don't think, have any wet weather. It should be dry all the way through. So softs, mediums and hards, and again it's going to be up to tactics of what these drivers take on the road. Soft is normally faster than hard tyres, and the majority of the cars do have a different manufacturer of tyre. It may differ a little depending on what manufacturer they're using, but not an awful lot to make much of a difference, I don't think. So drivers are out for qualifying right now, so let's get out on circuit so we can check out the action. So I've been looking at practice, these guys going around this circuit, and we are using our Factors plug-in to switch the cameras to give me a little bit of a hand to help me with the following the action. Got my track map so I can see if anything particularly goes wrong, and I apologise in advance for pronouncing some of these names on the list. We have 13 drivers currently on track. So what they're vying for is 40 laps of racing. They have started the qualification session with it just under 19 minutes to go. Michael Stoy is topping the timesheets at the moment with a 1:30.7. Michael Volker not too far behind in that Williams Honda. Now, as I say, lovely sounding machines from this era. Hear the popping and banging. Flames coming out the back. It's one of my favourite eras of Grand Prix racing in the 1980s. So Vito Martino has now gone up to the top of the timesheets. He must have found a shortcut there. This is 1:27.6. So Vito Martino currently in the Benetton Alfa Romeo. It seems to sound like it's scraping its tyres around the track for some reason. I don't know if that's a bug with the Benetton there. Johan Nieuwenhof in the Renault, currently in fourth. Looking at the sector times to see if anyone's putting any personal best. They've got plenty of time out on track. There is qualification rules for this series. You have to do your out lap, your fast lap and your in lap. Makes things feel a little bit more realistic. So Volker down the back straight. Car braking into this series of corners. Go through this quick set of corners there. There's a nasty bump on the inside of that corner there. And short straight up to this. It feels like a hairpin. And then hopefully popping over some of these curbs. You can't run over these curbs too much. This is based in 1979, this track, and curbs are lethal back then. So I won't see too many cars dropping wheels onto the curb. It will be destroying the car, or at least unsettling the car. So across the line, Michael Volker goes, and he is still in the third place with a 133.4. Dale Borvek, and currently in sixth in the Williams Honda. On the back straight we go. I was hoping to get some of the corner names. I'm never normally good with some of the corner names. It's going to be very difficult. I'm not a native Spanish speaker, can you believe it? So Johan coming through. It looks like the majority of these corners always end up in these right, left, right combinations. So down the back straight, Michael Volker again. Still got that 127.6 to beat. So up to this hairpin bend or spoon bend, and then through quick left or right section, avoiding those curbs. And we'll start the third sector. So Vito Maestino, the driver to beat at the moment in the Ares BMW. So these cameras making it, really giving a sense of speed to these cars as they go past. There's a car off the track on the right hand side, but I don't think that should have bothered Vito. Down the short straight, a little hump down the hill, and a quick section down here into the last corner. Braking really hard, one of the slowest corners on the track. And then through the S-bend and up over the line. That is another personal best of 127.3. See that Galetti has topped into the front row. So Galetti is now in second position. Currently in the pits, probably doing some setup work. That's a 128.3, so times are getting closer. So let's have a step down the field. See if we can see some different drivers. You see the cameras are concentrating on the top. We've got Andy D in the Ferrari, currently in 8th place. Ooh, getting very close to that curb there. Unsettled the car. Looks like he's got a Williams just behind him. He's coming to the end of his lap. I don't think there's going to be an improvement. So Andy D stays in 8th place. Joe Reebok taking the scenic route over the gravel there without a front wing. That thing won't turn in very easily without a front wing. So he needs to head back to the pits. He's got most of the lap to do, unfortunately, without any front downforce, so it's going to be very difficult. So Michael Stoy currently in 3rd place at the Brabham BMW. Apparently this car back in 1984 had was one of the most powerful engines in Formula 1. It's quoted many different horsepower figures. I'm not sure how much of it is true, but so Michael Stoy coming through these S-bends. A slight hump in the middle of that section, unsettling the car. Can't quite get You would think you can go through it full throttle, but because of that little bump, it makes it very, very difficult. So there's a yellow flag in sector 2. That's Julian Kerr. He's got going again. So in the Ram Hart there, just missed his accident, but he's managed to get going. And he's going to get back to the pits, currently in 6th. So Vito Martino currently in the pits, tweaking the setup possibly. But these drivers do have 40 laps of racing to go, so qualification is not the end of the story. We do have that big long back straight for slipstream opportunities, so we're going to be coming through the Big Spoon Bend. It's got an official name, I'd imagine, the Curvon de Salotto. So I would say that it's probably a slight lift on entry, and try and carry as much speed, but you don't want to go too wide, otherwise that's a huge accident. I've done that myself in a similar period of cars. So let's have a look at Gillespie currently in the ATS. He's currently following another driver. This should give him a little slipstream up to turn 1, but that's not ideal. You do want to make sure that you get some room on track for yourself, unless you get a nice toe up that is the back straight just after sector 2 has started. So Marco Salvaggio in the Renault, again following closely to Ligier ahead. Currently on a timed lap in 3rd, so 1:29.4. It does look like Vito Martino has found something extra special. Maybe he's turned up the wick a little, maybe he's decided to run the very sticky tyres. You may actually be able to see the tyre choice. Let's see if we've got the tyre choice on the tower. Indeed we do. There's a couple of people that are using the red softer tyres, but the majority are on mediums, which I find quite surprising. I would have thought that people would have gone out on the softer tyre. It won't last very long, but the softer tyre is the tyre to be on for qualifying. And be on minimum fuel. There's a car unfortunately stopped. It's Matthias Bogle that's trying to get his car around the right way on track. He parked on the exit at the first chicane. So be very careful because cars come through there near enough full speed. I also saw Joe Reebok. We did see him without a front wing on his car. It looks like he had parked it on the back straight, and looks like he has headed retired to the pits, so Joe Reebok will take no further part in this. And I think Matthias Bogle will also not take any further part in qualifying, so we're going to stay in 5th. I'm not too sure. Salvaggio in 3rd place in the Renault. The Works Renault at that time. One of the fastest cars in 1984. So at least that Benetton doesn't seem to be scraping any tyres there. So Joseph Muller in the Benetton. So Vito Martino putting another fast lap in. Going through the 2nd sector up to the slice corners of the track, braking hard down to the hairpin. Seems a little bit off cam, but it's a bit bumpy on the entry as well. And having to take care of the bumps coming through this section. Ensure not to put a wheel on either the outside curb or the inside curb. And down the hill towards this really fast section, having to brake and turn at the same time. and then through the final corner, one of the slowest corners of the track, and accelerate hard all the way to the Armco on the outside. Completes another, that was a 126.7, so moving that pole position, that provisional pole position, even further away. So with only 7 minutes to go, is Martino at the top, provisional pole. That's a very good slide from, I thought Salvaggio was actually going to hold that, had it all crossed up in the last corner there, and he's decided to take it to the pits. So Martino leads, Galetti second, Salvaggio is in third, Eli Clark is in fourth, Story is in fifth, Bodon will stay in sixth, Volker in seventh, Müller in eighth, Reebok in ninth, and Kerr in 10th. So Martino continues to put the laps in over those bumps. So we're going to get an onboard shot perhaps from Martino. Some scraping of some tyres there. It's not the nicest sound in the world. Now that's what you want round that big spoon bend. You're going to get a lot of understeer, as we saw from that Williams Honda. I wonder if he actually held that. He would have got a big slingshot shot onto the straight, but the downforce loss through that big fast corner would be quite severe. He did in fact survive. He is in one piece, so Neuenhoff has decided to try and chase the car ahead. It's Benetton that was ahead of him. So Galetti, fastest lap time in the first sector, 29.3. So unfortunately, we are getting some sound bugs from the tyres here. Hopefully that cures itself in the race. So provisional pole time 26.5. So currently Eli Clark is sitting in the pits, currently in 5th in the Lotus. We haven't seen a lot of the Lotuses. We've seen a lot of these BMWs though. We're having BMW all the way down the back straight. Pick your braking point and then go through this fast right-hander to left. And then right again. Up to the hairpin. So Story currently in 7th place. Slightly down in the first sector. The faster guys are in the 29s in the first sector. So Reebok is sounding like it's banging off the limiter all the way down that straight. Not ideal. So Renault Salvaggio, or Salvaggio. I'm going to trip over that name, I know I am. Currently in 3rd place, he's 8/10 away from 2nd, so he's got to do something really special in this dying minutes of qualification. So only just over 3 minutes to go. His personal best in the 1st and 2nd sector. Just coming up to the end of the lap and he's going to cross the line. So he does improve. It's a 127.6, so only 1/10 away from 2nd place. So it's very, very close. Very close between the 2nd and 3rd. 1.5 tenths between them. Neuenhoff has a little more find. He needs about 1.3 seconds. He's coming down the pit lane. Possibly going to try another lap at the end. He's got 1.3 seconds to find. So Michael Story in the Brabham. Salvaggio down the back straight, keeping it pinned. Again, personal best in the first sector. Galetti currently in second place. He is 9 tenths away from pole. He thinks he's possibly going to be able to take pole with this. He's the fastest car of all in the first sector. 29.3. That's very fast for the first sector. So coming through to cut the beam for the second. And then this left-hander. He has traffic in the way. So Galetti unfortunately may have been unsighted by the car ahead in that second sector. It doesn't look like he's going to improve. Still 9 tenths away, unfortunately, as he crosses the line. 1.5 minutes to go. So Martino still thinks he can possibly improve. Coming down to the dying seconds of qualification. 1 minute to go. So Williams Honda of Borveg down the back straight. That's all the power he can get down there. He is quite off in the first sector, if my timing sheet is correct. A couple of seconds down, so he must have had a little wobble in that first section. And across the line is Bogle in the Lotus Renault. In the 8th place. He's going to possibly go for one more lap. He's got time for it. There's only 20 seconds left on the clock. Top 3 are in the pits. 4th and 5th are still out on track, and Johan is one of them. In 4th place. Personal best in the first sector. 30.0. So not far away. Those bumps really unsettling the car coming into these slower corners. The car slightly off ahead. I don't know if that's going to put him off. That's 5th place of Eli Clark, who unfortunately has come to grief, and that will be the end of her qualification. She will stay in 5th unless someone else can challenge, but 4th of Neuenhoff, slightly down in the second sector. He does have 1.3 to find to even jump up a place, but this is for pride more than anything. So he does, he managed to better his time with a 128.5. He is 8 tenths away. Over in the Lotus Renault, coming through big spoon curve here up to the end of the lap. So we only got 2 people on track, and they are together. So it is Bogle in 8th and 11th place of Julian Kerr just behind. So Julian Kerr hoping to get a little bit of a draft into this final part. So Bogle comes into the pits, doesn't think he can improve, and Kerr behind stays in 11th place. Well, the start in order for that, because that was fast and furious. That 20 minutes or so of qualification went by very, very quickly indeed. I was quite surprised. So drivers have at least a little bit of 5 minutes warm up just to get their change over their setups from qualification mode to race mode, possibly changing to a different tyre. Now these drivers do have the opportunity to have a formation lap at the start of this race, but we'll take you through the grid. So it's Martino on first, Galetti in second on the front row. Second row, Salvalaggio is in third. Neuenhoff is in 4th. Eli Clark 5th. Reebok 6th. Story 7th. Bogle in 8th. So Muller lines up in 9th place. Volker in 10th. Julian Kerr is in 11th. Bolveg in 12th. And we have D in 13th. Schuerkamp in 14th. And rounding out the field, is Rosa in 15th in the Tyrrell. So a good mix of cars. The Tyrrell seem to be out the back, and I don't know if that's because of engine power. But a good mix of cars in this series and on our grid. So as I said, drivers are now going to take a little bit of warm up. They've possibly been practicing on race fuel load. They're going to need to fill it up to the top, and it's going to be very dependent on turbo settings or fuel map settings to see who can make these cars last, who can make these tyres last. No, I don't believe there's going to be a mandatory pit stop. So are we going to have some different strategies with tyres? Is someone going to decide to take the hard tyres and try to take them all the way to the end? They probably will be lacking a little bit of pace, and it will take a while for those hard tyres to warm up as well. So that will be very interesting to see. But 40 laps of racing, with lap times in the ranges of 127 to about 130. So it's a long old race. Drivers have got to settle in for this. Don't want to get damage early on either. So with a race like this, with cars that are monsters like this, I would imagine that stretching the wrists is a thing as well. So as far as this circuit is concerned, as I say, this is the number 15 circuit in Buenos Aires. It's now actually referred to as the Autodromo Oscar Juan Galvez. And it was used a lot through the 80s in Formula 1. It actually started in the 80s. No, it started in the 50s for Formula 1. It now, the only major events that it holds is the Argentine Motorcycle Grand Prix. Yeah, it's in fact coming back to the circuit in 2027. It did hold races through the 60s, the 80s, and a couple of years in the 90s. But other series that might have taken part here: TCR South America, the Stock Car Pro Series, TC 2000 Series, Turismo Carretera Series, even the World Sports Car Championship has visited here on a number of occasions. So I'm looking down on my notes here to find the number 15 circuit. There are a number of circuits, a number of layouts to this that cut into the infield. One of the fastest circuits or layouts is number 12. So number 15 is 5.968 kilometers, 3.7 miles, 16 turns. Actually, the race lap record around this layout circuit was held by Nelson Piquet in 1981 in the BT49C with a 1:45.2, so we're slightly faster than Nelson Piquet today. So sim racing trying to match the real world. There's always going to be a little bit of difference. You don't have that fear factor. So you can push as hard as you like. So Eli Clark trying her best to get in that last bit of warm up just before we start. So drivers are going to take to the grid. They're going to have a formation lap, and they will take themselves around one lap where we'll possibly have some weaving. To keep the tyres in the temperature window. You don't want to go, first couple of turns on this track are particularly fast, so you don't want to go in there with cold tyres. That would be the last thing you want to do. And then you head out through that big right-hander. Drivers have got to be very careful with the amount of downforce and the amount of tyre temperature you're going to have. You don't want to run wide on that turn either. Right, we've got the call to go to the grid. So we've got 40 laps of racing ahead of us. So we got it's quite a cold track temperature, 24 degrees, 21 degrees air temperature. It's quite cold. I'd imagine that it's going to be very difficult to keep tyre temperature in these cars, but we'll have to see what tyres drivers have gone for and what strategy it's going to play out through the entire race. So we've got 40 laps of racing to see how this is going to play out. So just lining up on the grid, we'll take a slow lap to the grid behind first place car of Martino. Well, hoping that no one loses any bodywork in the first part of this race, and we should be limping back to the pits. So formation lap time. Also, another thing you don't want to do is bang off the limiter and blow your engine off the start. Everyone seems to have got away, which is good. So this is the second round of this series, but we've got 7 rounds in total, so we will be heading to Monaco on the 30th of March, and then Silverstone on the 13th of April. Hockenheim will be next on the 27th of April, then we've got Monza the 11th of May, and then our last round at a very tight street circuit, Adelaide. That should be a good showdown for these drivers. Lots of Armcos bumped into, lots of obstacles. So we're going to have to see how these drivers negotiate. There's got 15 drivers on the track. So we're seeing no particular weaving. So maybe a lot of these drivers are concerned about tyre wear. So Martino just coming to the S's. He doesn't want to go out too far in front because he'll be dropping tyre temperature as he sits on the grid. There is a big space. There is a big space between first and the second here, so this I can't think this is tactics. He's going to slow himself down. Is this tyre temperature going to drop too much? He really needs to be back in the pack up. And lining himself up on the grid. Maybe this gives him an opportunity to do some burnouts if he feels like it. So slowing right down. Maybe checking for a clutch bite point, but the start-finish grid is not far off the last corner here. So 15 cars lined up on the grid. They all look like they are settled. They all look like they are ready to go. Right, lights are on. And green flag flies, and away we go. And it looks like the front row has got away. Second row looked like they had some problems, and it looks like there was a spinner in the back there. So Bogle is dropping down the order. That might have been him. So Martino is away without any problems. So Eli Clark is up to second place. So that was where the second row came from. The top two have streaks away from the rest of the field. So out of the blocks very, very quickly. Eli Clark fancies a go under the rear wing down the fastest part of the circuit. So Martino having to go defensive very, very early. Eli Clark heading to the outside for the turn. 2 turns coming up. Should be on the inside and she passed before the braking zone, which is quite surprising. Martino perhaps lacking in tyre temperatures. A third and fourth may have came together in that chicane behind them, but we're concentrating on the top 2. So Eli Clark from the second row of the grid is now in the lead, but Martino isn't letting her get away. A very, very fast starting first and second. There's a slight gap to third. So Michael Stoy is back in third, followed by Joe Reebok. Joe Reebok was down in 10th place, I believe. He's now up to 4th. So very fast start in Joe Reebok in the Ligier. So as we complete our first lap of the race, it's Eli Clark leading for Martino, Stoy, Reebok and Muller. I think Bogle may have had a collision at the start. I did see a car go completely sideways. Was it actually Galetti? There was a black and a yellow car. I saw a car going sideways, knocking off a rear wing. I do see Julian Kerr in the pits at the moment, so maybe he was involved. So looking back to Galetti, he is now in the pits. Indeed, it was Galetti that had that come together, or at least maybe stepped on the throttle and didn't judge the wheel spin and went sideways. Or maybe someone else got caught up in it, going 3 wide down the back straight. That was very, very tight. I think one driver pulled out and the other one wasn't expecting that to happen, but 3 wide down the back straight. Bogle is trying to make up for lost time as he goes side by side. I think that is Muller in the Benetton that is going side by side with. He was able to pass. Muller coming through these bumpy turns. Currently in 7th place. So he's waiting on the throttle. Down the hill we come. Slightly wide on exit, which is going to leave him vulnerable into this last turn for that car behind. So best lap time of the race so far, 1:31.1. Oh, and we go sideways. Is that? Who is that? That is Johan going sideways. I think he stepped on the loud pedal a bit too hard. Doesn't look like we're damaged. So that's good to see. So he'll be able to continue. Schuerkamp and Andy D. Schuerkamp, it looked like he was really cutting it fine to the edge of that track. Volker and Rosa now nose to tail coming out of the spoon curve onto the back straight. Has that Tyrrell got anything for that Williams Honda? And again up to 4th and 5th. Reebok and Sal Valaggio battling down that back straight. It is action all the way down the field, so that Tyrrell did have something for that Honda. 8th and 9th place. So Rosa was able to pass Volker. So it looks like that is a Ligier, I believe. It looks like it's very tightly sprung. And we've got Bogle just behind Reebok. So down the hill, Bogle trying to stay on the back of Reebok. Coming through this section at Tyrrell. No, it's an ATS, I think. Looks like he's slowing. That was a lap car of Galetti, I believe, is pitting. He managed to get out of the way before the leaders came through. So you see how much Bogle has to drop back in some of these faster corners. There seems to be a lot of aero wash. Perhaps trying to protect engine with the temps, but he's able to close up in this faster section. Now he's got some downforce on his car. Don't run too wide going up the straight though. So this is Ligier versus Lotus Renault. He's gaining all the time. Is it going to be passing before the braking zone? That's the Ligier going backwards in his mirror. Oh, unfortunately, braked a little bit too late. So Bogle may feel a little aggrieved there. I think perhaps Reebok was going a little bit too much speed, and it looks like he's letting him through on the outside there. Bogle nearly lost it. And Reebok has dropped back a bit further, so I wonder if there was possibly damage. He did nudge into the rear of Bogle, but it didn't look like any front wings were damaged in that contact, but costly mistake. So we've got 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th all together on track. So it's Lotus Tyrrell. That is that Bogle off? Indeed it is. Unfortunately he's let the McLaren Honda by through the first couple of turns. So now Muller has to try and find his way past this Lotus Renault or Bogle. So around this corner, tyres are absolutely screaming. I did expect that these drivers may take it easier in the first few laps, but there has been no quarter given. It's been action all the way down the field, but meanwhile, first and second, the gap is now up to 2 seconds, and I'm wondering whether Vito's is biding his time, but Eli Clark made an absolute stormer of a start from the second row and is now up into the lead. So Volker unfortunately followed the Tyrrell of Rosa into that turn, being very careful on the throttle. So the Williams Honda with the Lotus Renault behind, on the hill. So Gillespie looks like he is our first retirement after that accident at the start, where we saw him spear off into the pit wall. Oh, it's in more trouble. A little bit of oversteer coming out of that final corner. And is that Andy D that has stopped? I think he may have been avoiding someone. I'm not seeing anyone around him, so Andy D does get going again. Neuenhoff and Muller. So up to the fast right-hander. Can Muller stay under the rear wing? Looks like he's dropped back a bit. Can't really handle staying under the rear wing. Rosa and Volker down the back straight. Meanwhile, are nose to tail. So 5th and 6th. So the top two are within 2 seconds. There is a slight gap to 3rd. And then you have this battle between 5th and 6th. Not forgetting 4th in there as well. The name I'm having real trouble pronouncing. So 5th and 6th. And then we have evenly spaced 7th and 8th of Bogle and Reebok. So Reebok has come back after that little nudge of Bogle. I was just about to say 9th and 10th were really close as well. Bolveg is trying to fend off Neuenhoff. So William Honda versus Renault. So through the final corner. Now Neuenhoff needs to stay under this rear wing. Look at the power of the Renault. You saw the turbo kick in out of that final corner. Maybe strategically used a little more power just to get ahead just before that section, but it looked like he nearly jumped over the car in front. So 7 laps gone already. Fast and furious action. I'm intrigued to see strategy-wise as we look at the battle between now 1st and 2nd has tightened up. So Eli Clark looking down on the tower as well. It looks like everyone is on mediums. D has decided to go for hard tyres down in 13th place. I wonder whether that's maybe a reason they spun. Struggling to keep temperature in those tyres. So I'm also noticing from my UI as well that track temperature is around 45 degrees. It's now changed a little bit, so I wonder whether I was seeing a little bit of an error. So 45 degrees does seem a bit more like it, but we've had 8 laps of flat out running, which has brought the track temperature up. Still quite a low air temperature of 21 degrees, and 21.9 if you want to be exact. So Martino was very close to Eli Clark for a little portion of that lap, that previous lap, but dropped back a little. So I wonder whether it's actually very difficult to get close. I'm seeing the 14th of Andy D again. That is the first car we can see that's actually on fire. Andy D has blown up that Ferrari, perhaps staying a bit too close to the red line. So that's unfortunate for Andy D. So Andy D is our next retirement. I don't think he will be getting back to the pits with that car on fire. So that Ferrari is cooked, as they say. So Joe Reebok is coming into the pits as this battle for first and second is fully underway. So we did see down this front straight the Renault of Neuenhoff was able to pass the car ahead with a big overspeed. So I wonder whether drivers are fiddling around with that boost at certain sections of the track when they need to. There's a lot of fast corners on this track, and there's a couple of tight hairpins as well. You can't put the power down early enough. You feel like you're waiting to put the power down. So through the fastest section of the track, Martino is able to keep it very, very tight. You see those yellow lines on the outside. If you go onto those, they are a little slippier than you would imagine, and they don't they head directly onto the grass, no curbs or anything. So you'll head into the barrier quickly. Is that Eli Clark making a little bit of a mistake? That was. So braking far too late into this section, and now lapped cars now come into play. So Eli Clark now has the lap car. I believe that's Eligio just ahead, who moves out of the way, lets the leaders through. So Eli Clark and Martino continue battle whilst getting through these lapped cars. And looking at 5th and 6th as well further back. There's a battle for 5th and 6th. And the director was actually listening to me. So Rosa and Volker nose to tail. So Tyrrell versus Williams Honda. So 10 laps gone. Back to the battle at the front. Martino able to stay under the rear wing in this fast section. He loses a little, but not too much. Is he able to stay under the rear wing coming into the faster corner? As we switch back to 5th and 6th. Coming down to the final section of the lap. So through the final corner, we saw a lot of drivers really having trouble, or in fact getting sideways around that corner. That is 10th. I think Muller has gone round. I didn't see any contact with Borvek, but Muller has unfortunately gone around. I saw him on the grass in the background. So slight wide moment for Rosa ahead, which means that Volker can possibly go alongside, or is he waiting for the main straight? Because he will possibly be just passed again in the draft. So he's waiting. Now he can unleash the power of that Honda all the way down this back straight, out of the draft and alongside and past the Tyrrell before the braking zone. We do have a stock car. That is 12th place of Julian Kerr. So I wonder what happened to Julian Kerr. Is that another engine gone? A slightly smoking engine. That might just be overheated. He might be able to get it going again. So the ram heart of Julian Kerr possibly again just running into the red line too much. That Renault going far too wide at that hairpin, was able to keep control of it. Back to the battle. between first and second. So these drivers do have just under 30 laps to go. So it's been a very action-packed. I'm noticing. No, that's the wrong Renault. I thought Eli Clark had perhaps lost the lead. That is a Williams Honda. What is that Williams Honda? That's 8th place of Volker. He's gone around. So he's now dropped down to 8th place. So 5th, 6th and 7th have to battle on their own for the time being. But meanwhile, Eli Clark is still being shadowed by Martino in that Arrows BMW. So, you'd see Julian Leclerc, I was going to say on fire, wasn't quite on fire, that engine was steaming a little, overheated, perhaps it had stopped and he couldn't get it started again, and he is 4th retirement unfortunately. So, it seems like Clark is having trouble slowing that Lotus Renault down in some of these corners. It's either that or we're seeing some very varied lines coming into these corners, some wide lines. So through the first section of the track. So that fastest lap of Eli Clark of 31.1 early on. Lap times have dropped off to about in the 32s. So again, Martino wants to try and keep under the rear wing through this section. It looks like it's very difficult. Doesn't run too wide though. And we know the draft is strong down this back straight. So a lap card. I think that was a Tyrrell just getting out of the way. That was 10th place of Schirerkamp. So coming up to slowest corner of the track and through this left, right, left combination with the bump in the middle. Up this short straight, you seem to come over this lip of the hill and then down into this section. You don't quite realise how much momentum you're taking into this final section, but Eli Clark this time is able to get that Lotus Renault slowed down. So it does look like these drivers are very well matched. I don't think are they possibly leaving something in reserve? I imagine staying under the rear wing. Martino is possibly wearing his tyres. They're both on the same types of tyres, so they have taken mediums. But out front, Eli Clark can pick her lines. She doesn't have any loss of downforce, so perhaps the wear might be a little better. There is a lap car coming up in front. That is 9th place of Müller. So they're just about to pass Müller coming into this section. This will be very awkward. So depending on where they're going to meet that car. So it's the tightest section of the track. So coming up to the hairpin, Eli Clark is going to find I believe it is a Benson in front. And there'll be I think that's Ballweg just gone off, and the leaders have passed without issue. So unfortunately 11th place of Ballweg has gone off. So still following that 9th place up to the final section of the track. I actually thought they would catch them a bit quicker. So you see that lap car just in front of these two cars. They should be able to pass them into the first sector of this track. It's actually making me a little bit nervous. Where are they going to get past? This might be Martino's opportunity. It might be a double draft. So Eli Clark is probably thinking, get out of the way. We're also seeing on the map that Volker has gone. Eli Clark is up the inside. That's a very, very fast place to pass a lap car. But Müller did very, very well to hang on around the outside. I'd imagine there wasn't a lot of grip out there. I'm seeing Volker is having some trouble. Is that another car that's having some engine trouble? No, he has got going against the 8th place of Volker. I did see a yellow flag out in that particular section of the track, but he has got going again. So as we go on board with Martino, this battle for the lead, struggling to put the grip to the track. Eli Clark, that rear end is wiggling all over the place. And also in corner exit as well, so it's not just slowing the car down, just getting the power down to get out of these corners. That Lotus Renault seems a bit feisty. Maybe the Aero's BMW is a little more predictable. So you see he's waiting. Doesn't hammer the throttle coming out the final turn. He has to apply the throttle very, very slowly. So into the first turns once again. 15 laps gone of 40. So we're nearly at half distance. It's a yellow in sector 2, but I think it has cleared. So 5th and 6th are battle resumed for Rosa and Neuenhoff. Tyrrell versus Renault. We did see that this Renault had passed that Tyrrell down the back straight, but somehow that Tyrrell has got past that Renault. So I'm wondering whether that horsepower is sometimes a bit of a detriment, or at least the turbo is a bit of a detriment. That Tyrrell, I believe, is not running a turbo that's naturally aspirated, so maybe a bit easier to handle, a bit more nimble, less heavy. So I'm seeing on the Muller has gone off in the second sector. Sticking with this battle for first and second. Eli Clark goes very wide, nearly clipping the curb on the outside, which would have raised those rear tyres off the ground. The gap is always between 1 second and 0.5. Can't quite get away. I'm looking on my map as well. It doesn't look like lapped cars. That's Neuenhoff, unfortunately getting the braking all wrong. Keeps it going in the gravel. Looks like he may have just locked the rears coming into from one of the fastest sections of the track down to one of the slowest. So Martino has now dropped back a little from Eli Clark. Perhaps getting a little bit of breather. There is more than half the race to go, so I can now see in the background that third place of Stoy. Whilst these two have been battling away, Stoy has been just sitting in the background, waiting. So could this then turn into not just top 2, but top 3? So the first, second and third covered by about 2 seconds, so that Brabham has got close in these laps. 9th place of Muller on the back straight. If that's the back straight, then that might be a car that's overheating. It's very strange that Muller would have gone off on the back straight, the inside there, so I wonder if he spun to the inside. Very strange place to come to grief. So this is Stoy. So the back of this top 3. Looking at lap times, he's able to put in the same lap times as the top 2, but I'm wondering if he's going to have the same problem as Martino, that he gets up to the back of the car in front, loses the front end, loses the downforce. So Martino is dropping further behind, and I'm wondering where the tyre wear is coming into it as well. So Eli Clark will possibly just need to pace herself out front. That's 5th place. The last section of track, that is Rosa that's gone around. He's possibly going to lose. So nearly loses 6th place. So this Unfortunately, he may lose it down the straight though. So the Tyrrell came to grief in the last corner. And Neuenhoff is back past, but there is another driver in for company there. So Rosa is probably kicking himself. He made that slight mistake and that Renault has got past. But look at the boost coming up to the really fast right-hander. He's able to really close on that Renault. Is he able to stay there and not understeer wide? So down the back straight, 5th and 6th. Gonna have to be a little closer than that. I don't know whether the Tyrrell is just lacking a bit of power. We did see the Renault feints to the inside. Did see the Renault was able to boost past that Tyrrell, so I wonder whether Rosa has got to maybe think a bit outside the box. Think of where that Renault is going to be handling worse, and it's going to be handling worse through these slower corners. As Rosa gets it all wrong coming out of that corner, slight oversteer. Tried to get the power down as quickly as possible, but unfortunately... Actually, we've seen Stoy is now up to 2nd. Is that a slight mistake from Martino? Martino is now down to 3rd place with 18 seconds adrift, so that must have been a mistake from Martino. So is he really suffering from tyre wear that he's now made a mistake? Eli Clark is now in the lead by 1.3 seconds, but Stoy is the sleeper agent. He's now moving up to the back of Eli Clark. So has Stoy played a blinder here? Has he been hanging back in 3rd place? Saving his tyres, saving his engine, saving his fuel. And now, with 18 laps gone, nearly at half distance, able to pull onto the back of Eli Clark. Can he do what Martino couldn't? Or what Martino was waiting for? So Lotus Renault versus Brabham BMW. So coming down to this is Rosa and Bogle. Replaced by Eli Clark and Stoy through the fastest corner of the track. 7th place of Rosa. Looks like he has dropped it down the bottom turn there. He has got going again. So that Tyrrell is becoming a little bit squirrely on corner exits. This looks like it's possibly making a few mistakes. Eli Clark continues to be shadowed, and it's this corner that she seems to be weak. Can't slow it down on that hairpin corner. So braking, I wonder whether the brakes are probably running a little bit hot as well. They always seem to be glowing no matter what, but I wonder whether just struggling to slow that car down. It's probably one of the heaviest. So the Brabham BMW of the story is able to stay with that Lotus Renault of Eli Clark. Eli Clark comes into the pits. Eli Clark has had enough of those tyres, so the first to pit is Eli Clark at exactly half distance. So they're all on the same tyres. Martino puts in the fastest lap of the race. So now that he's dropped back a bit, he's suddenly able to put in a 129.9. So was it a pit stop that I didn't see on the screen? That was possibly a pit stop for Martino. So did Martino get sick of looking at the rear wing of that Lotus Renault? I think maybe we're seeing that Martino has possibly pulled a little bit of a blinder here, because I'm seeing that Martino is now out in front of Eli Clark and has managed to gain some seconds. So the undercut possibly worked. So Eli Clark now 12 seconds from the lead. Now Stoy has now got 7 seconds to the car behind. Neuenhoff, Bogle through the first couple of turns. So, seeing on the timesheets as well, Rosa seems to have DNF'd in that Tyrrell. We saw that he was having trouble, a couple of spins, but he is unfortunately our next DNF. 20 laps remaining, we are at half distance across the line for Stoy. Now, does Stoy fancy going all the way to the end? Did you see that fastest lap time of Vito Martino? Last lap time of Michael Stoy was 1:33, so Martino is going to be within striking distance in about 2 laps if he goes at the same pace. So Stoy with Martino just behind. Eli Clark not really got a threat from 4th behind. So Stoy with Martino just behind. Bolveg is the last of our runners at the moment. Although saying that, Schuerkamp is 2 laps down in 11th, but he will soon pass Rosa on the road where he retired. So Schuerkamp is possibly the last. Is that a lapped car that's just gone around in the infield there? I'm not sure who that was. So the leader, now the lead has been cut down to 4.4 seconds. Fastest lap now on new tyres by Eli Clark, 1:29.4, so she has the pace. So Volker is now in the pits from 7th place. So Nieuwenhof and Bogle are in close proximity to each other. Now I'm intrigued to know if we have changed tyre compound. Volker is now our next retirement from 7th place. That is Eli Clark and Vito Martino are now in close proximity again. So Eli Clark, now that the tyres are warmed up, it's now the opposite way around. Martino has now got to defend from Eli Clark. So we have got a very interesting race on our hands for the latter half of this race. Seeing Muller off the track on the track map, but he's able to get going back in 8th. So we're seeing a few people dropping out, unfortunately, taking its toll after 20 laps of racing. Maybe loss of concentration is the thing, muscling these cars around this track for this amount of laps. It's very difficult now. Can this Lotus Renault stay with this Arrows BMW through the fastest section of the track? Eli Clark is now within a second and closing. 0.7 of a second, 0.6 of a second, so closing all the time. Able to keep a really tight line on the entry to that corner. Look how she's gaining. So down the back straight, Martino feels like he needs to defend. And not surprised, up to 3/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second by the end, but not quite enough. She's going to need to be really close to Martino coming into that first section to have a hope of getting past him on the draft, but that was a gain of about 1/4 of a second just in 2 corners and a straight there. So Martino now having to defend from Eli Clark, so the battle possibly has been called off for the lead for now. So Stoy can probably make hay while the sun shines and just run for it whilst these two battle. So Martino tried the undercut. It did work to start off with, but Eli Clark has been able to pull back that advantage in this next section of the race. So Eli Clark under the rear wing now within half a second, so she's closer than the lap before. So 0.6 of a second. Can't quite stay with Martino in this first section, faster section of this lap. So losing a little bit of downforce. Martino ahead, trying to break the draft. It seems there's a lap car just ahead of them. But he's going to be further away from the main straight, so they won't get involved. In fact, that's actually the leader that's ahead of these guys. It's not a lap car just yet. But again, Martino having to go defensive down the straight. I think Eli Clark does fancy a chance if she can get close into this corner. Got 15 laps to think about how to get past this guy. And most of the time in racing, when I'm trying to explain sim racing or racing to other people that are not in the know, it's basically high-speed chess. It is sometimes not just the ability to put the lap times in, but thinking of the weaknesses of your opponent and the strengths of your opponent, and exploiting their weaknesses, seeing, possibly staying behind the driver, seeing where they could possibly make a mistake, and pressing the issue. So staying in their mirror, possibly putting them off at the wrong moment, so they make a little bit of a mistake, putting them off, putting them out of their window, if you will. So Martino and Eli Clark continue to battle on. I do promise you there is a race going on elsewhere, but this battle for this second and third is kicking on. So that leader, so that Stoy has stayed ahead of these top two. They're actually, maybe Eli Clark is staying within draft, hoping that they can get to this leader, and then it is game on. So it's now a three-way battle for the lead. I don't know how long Stoy can possibly hold off these two. He doesn't have the lap time advantage, although he's brought his lap time down to a 1:31. So now a three-way battle for the lead with 15 laps to go. So on board with Martino. Where is he thinking about passing? So they've both got the same engine. So Arrow's BMW trying to pass the Brabham BMW ahead. So top three. That is that Stoy. The Stoy has finally given up on those tyres. He's finally decided to come to the pits. He had a 21-second advantage to fourth place. He may lose that. I'm looking on the track map. In fact, Stoy doesn't lose. I'm seeing fourth place come out of final corner, and Stoy will stay in third. So that strategy, while he was able to stay in the lead, saw the understeer for Martino coming through that fast corner, having to go defensive. So pick a side, pick a side. Unfortunately, that was a little bit naughty by Martino. I feel like Eli Clark had the momentum coming up one of the fastest points of the track. Although maybe Eli Clark saw a car's width. Unfortunately, that's put her off her rhythm. So is that, for now, the battle for the lead over with? But we did see Martino pull to the inside. But again, I think the overspeed is quite significant once you get within 0.3, 0.2 of the car in front. So Eli Clark tried to pull to the inside and unfortunately ran out of track. And so she's going to have to regroup and maybe try another go. So now Martino will be wise to possibly an overtake on that main straight. So maybe Eli Clark has got to think of something completely different. So this was the lap car that I saw in the distance. That's the Benetton that Martino is getting past, and Eli Clark will be past at a certain point. Eli Clark is able to keep it really tight at the entry of that fast turn. Drifts out and then is able to cut back in, so running a significant amount of downforce. So that's the lap car of Joseph Muller. Unfortunately, he's in the way of Eli Clark through one of the most trickiest parts of the circuit. So up to the slowest corner, so I'm wondering whether Joseph Muller is going to pull to, he stays on line in fact, and Eli Clark is able to overtake quite easily. Next on the list is Schuerkamp. You can see ahead. It's within a couple of corners of the leaders. So through to the final corner, Eli Clark continues the chase. Now he feels slightly aggrieved by being maybe forced on the grass a little bit, but battle resumed in possibly a few laps time. So through the fast section of the track, let's see what kind of speed that Martino or even Salvalaggio, I am going to get that name right, best lap time for Stoy, who is now in a 129.1. so there's a light fuel load and possibly new tyres, but he's 12 seconds adrift of the top two, so I don't quite think he has. In fact, there is more than 12 laps left, but I'm not sure he has the pace advantage. He's the second quicker at the moment, but those tyres may drop off quite early. So with our 8 runners at the moment, I think that most of them have done their pit stops. And they are all on medium tyres, so that seems to be the tyre choice. No one decided to do anything particularly rash. No one decided to drop onto soft tyres. They probably wouldn't have lasted the distance. I was intrigued to know what Andy D was going to do with his hard tyres, but unfortunately his Ferrari was set aflame. So 28 laps gone of 40. Eli Clark continues the chase down the main straight. The car she can see in front of her is the leader. No lapped cars for quite some time. So 1.5 seconds to close. So now these lap cars are out of the way. They were doing 131, so that was possibly lap car intervention, but she's closing all the time. Right, so she already went to the inside on the straight. What is she gonna do different? That Lotus Renault does seem like a bit of a beast in the corners. A beast to handle anyway. Just getting the thing slowed down is very, very difficult, so as we I spoke too soon, so just getting it slowed down for the corners. But that particular corner Eli Clark has had a little bit of trouble with throughout this race, just getting that thing stopped. I think it's lucky there's possibly a little bit of track runoff that you can dip into, so the corner is a little wider. So 1.1 seconds coming on to the main straight for the next time. So let's have a look for top speed. So coming up the main straight, 330 coming into that first turn. Let's see, so 340, 345. Slowing down, losing a little bit of speed in this fastest corner on the track, so 340 on entry. And to slow it down a little so you can feather in the throttle through the middle of the turn and then flat on the throttle as soon as she feels like she's got the grip. So 349, 350, 351. That is the top speed of the Lotus Renault down that back straight. I'd be intrigued to see what Martino has got. So now, within 7/10 of a second, go on board with the Lotus Renault coming through the second section of this track. Over the bumps, slight bit of oversteer. That was costly. Just going to need to build that gap all over again. Downhill into this left-right section. And then up to the final turn. Now if this was the modern version of this circuit, all of those curves would be flat. These cars would be possibly jumping all over them. So, in the fastest parts of the circuit, and the fastest corners of the circuit, don't want to run too wide onto that curve. So flat on the floor, slight lift, big lift, and then back on the throttle. It looks like Martino possibly had a bigger lift, so down the left hand side this time. So Eli Clark down the outside of the corner. It looks like she is clear of that BMW. So it looked like a mistake from Martino. It looked like he had a bigger lift than Eli Clark coming through that fast corner, so I don't know if he felt like he had some understeer. And he felt like he was possibly going off. And I've done that before in cars of this type. If you go slightly wide out that corner, yes, you do have some asphalt runoff. But you get loose, your car goes around and you're heading to the barrier either on the left or the right hand side very, very quickly. So, costly mistake from Martino. But we're now back to where we were at the start of the race. It's now Eli Clark leading once again, and Martino didn't really have an answer in the early portion of this race, so I wonder whether he's had a little bit of a think. Does he have the tyre life left? And now we've done about 32 laps of this race. It's going to be a lot of marbles offline as well, so the grip is going to be lacking for anything adventurous. So through the fastest corner of this track. See if we can go on board with Martino. So fifth gear. So it was 351 for Eli Clark. Banging off the limiter, 348. So Eli Clark has the top speed at probably one of the most important parts of the track. So Martino has to do something at a different place of the track. He doesn't have the lap time advantage on the straight. He wasn't that far away from Eli Clark under the rear wing or in the draft, so I'm wondering whether it just wasn't close enough to get the draft advantage, but he seems to be able to close in these slower corners, but finding a way by in these faster chicanes is not proving to be very easy, so he's got to have a little bit of a think. We know that Eli Clark is possibly a little weak into one of the second hairpins after the main straight, or at least the back straight. We've seen her go off a number of times, or at least get a wiggle on. So with 33 or 40 laps gone, it is Eli Clark in the lead, Martino second, Stoy. I thought he was possibly going to stay out and keep the lead, but unfortunately pitted just in front of these two drivers. So Salvalaggio is in fourth. It's a Lotus fourth and fifth with Neuenhoff in fifth, quite a way adrift. And Bogle, after his escapades in the middle of the race, is now up to sixth place. We can see Muller in the Benetton having a few offs and is now down to seventh. Unfortunately 2 laps down on the leader. And then we have Schuerkamp in the Tyrrell, who's been plugging away near the rear of the field, but is still going in that Tyrrell. So unfortunately we've lost both Williams Hondas of Volker and Borweg, and Schuerkamp's teammate Rosa has also retired from this race. Care, Reebok, D and Giletti are the rest of our current retirements. So again, Story is finding lap time 1:28.8. So has Story found something? He is closing on to the back of these guys. We are set for a 5-lap showdown to the end of this race, perhaps. So Martino again dropping away at the end of this stint. He's got Story for company. But has Story got enough laps to be able to catch and pass? It seemed like he was suffering with a little bit of understeer through some of the faster corners on this track. Losing a little bit of touch with Eli Clark, but still within that 1.5 second gap. But Story is lurking again in the background. I'm getting some deja vu. Isn't this what it was like just before the first pit stops? So Story stalking there in the background. Martino has to keep his eyes forward and eyes behind. So Martino's probably thinking, it would be much better if I was just out front. It's very stressful trying to keep eyes on it front. Think of a passing manoeuvre for the car ahead. Or do you defend for two behind? It's so Martino under the rear wing in the first couple of corners. But Story pulled in about 1 second in that last lap. And he's now possibly close enough for a little bit of draft. So 0.5 of a second. Arrows BMW versus Brabham BMW. So let's have a look at Story coming up the main straight. Let's see what top speed we got. So 341. So lacking a lot of straight line speed. So possibly a lot more downforce, or at least maybe running a different engine mode, perhaps different setup to the guys ahead. But he's able to keep it controlled in the corners, and that's possibly where he's gaining all of the time. So possibly two different directions in setup between these drivers. Eli Clark possibly went for straight line speed to stay away at the fastest point of the track. So Eli Clark going slightly wide. Slight understeer from Martino coming out that final turn. Can't quite get the power down there. That's Story. That is Story through to second. So Story has played an absolute blinder here. He's always been stalking in the background, but Martino, it's a different car ahead, but has he got anything for Story in his final 4 laps of the race? So Martino does have a top speed advantage. I'm thinking, look, he's really struggling in that final part of the that spoon curve, and that's the place where you really need the nose on your car. You really need the downforce so you can get off that corner and stay with the car ahead. So there is a little bit of top speed at disadvantage for Story. So Martino going slightly shallow to that corner. It's running slightly wide. So yellow in sector 3. It looked like 8th place of Schuerkamp, just going off the road, but is now being able to get going again. So the top 3, a slight mistake from Eli Clark now. Story is right under the rear wing. So what was 3rd place is now staring out the lead. So this is quite surprising from Story. I didn't think he would have this much pace at the end of the race. 4th place is having a little bit of a problem at the final corner, but was able to get going. So the top three, this order is not settled. I was just about to try and lock in the top three positions, but it's not settled. Eli Clark has been able to jump away by a second. Martino and Stoy nose to tail. We'll be interested to hear from the drivers after this race how they found these cars. They have done a round already. Their first round was at Harama, which must have been very difficult in these cars. A track which is very, slightly more technical than this one. So it's a mistake from Eli Clark. That nearly allowed Stoy up the inside. So we have noticed that Eli Clark has been a little bit weak on the brakes. 2 laps to go. Top 3 covered by a second. With a lap car just ahead. This lap car is going to get the fright of their life. Pulls to the inside. Wants no part of this. And I'm not surprised. So Martina now at the back of this podium battle. He's able to stay under the rear wing, but is he going to suffer from that understeer that he had before? No, he's able to keep it pinned. So possibly overtaking into the braking zone, but it's very, very close. So Martino coming up the inside. And gets it done. Can he get it stopped? He does get it stopped. So can Stoy fight back in his final 2 laps of the race? So Martino going slightly defensive into that. Slight oversteer on the exit. Looks like he was drifting out of that corner, but he was very lucky to get it going again. He got onto the gravel, got onto the grass. And Stoy had a face full of arrows BMW, but couldn't actually get past it. So yellow in sector 2, that's 8th place. Wondering whether 8th place is going to cause a problem, but they are quite spread out around the track, so no such problems. So Stoy right under the rear wing. This is a completely different place. I thought we would see a passing manoeuvre, but Eli Clark suffering on that inside of that corner, possibly going in a little too fast. So Martino back up to 2nd place. So Stoy with his possibly a disadvantage with straight line speed. Now Martino thinking of having a go at Eli Clark coming down this straight on one of the last laps of the race. Eli Clark doesn't feel like she has to go defensive. He's not close enough. Able to get it stopped. This means that Stoy is right behind, so any mistake from Martino will let Stoy by. So again, taking to the... Oh! That was unfortunate. So Martino went defensive, and it looked like possibly Stoy was looking for the cutback, so he went wide, but went a bit too wide. Now Martino tried to get the power down then, but it's allowed Eli Clark to get away. So Eli Clark only has to suffer this last corner 2 more times. So able to get the power down smoothly out this final corner. Then on to final lap. No, Eli Clark. That was very unfortunate. Looked like Eli Clark got it all wrong coming out the final corner. Tried to gather it up, and unfortunately Martino tried to seek an opportunity, but they ended up coming together. And whether the stewards are going to have a look at that, but I don't think any driver was really at fault. Eli Clark was just trying to gather it up. Now Eli Clark back down to 2nd. Martino, we did see him spinning in the background. So Stoy is gained out of all of this. It's in the lead by 0.5 of a second now. Eli Clark with that straight line speed advantage doesn't have anything on the main straight, not quite close enough. I reckon if Stoy can just keep it together, he may have this. So he was looking at, slight oversteer moment coming out of that chicane. These bumps looking like really hard work for these drivers. I think he may be home free. This is the easiest part of the track for the Brabham BMW. That Lotus Renault coming up to the final corner as well. This will be the final corner. So power down and across the line, and Stoy wins it with Eli Clark in second. This is why Martino dropped back. He lost his front wing out of that collision. That was unfortunate, but he's going to come home in third place. So Stoy dropped back after that pit stop phase. I thought it was all over, but he was able to put in the laps late on in the race and managed to get back to the lead. He did benefit from that collision between Eli Clark and Martino, but he's got to be happy with that. It was action all the way down the order. All the way down the order. So what a race. We have 8 finishers out of 15. And I am out of breath. I don't know about you. But amazing action at Buenos Aires. Amazing action. So, let's take a little bit of a breather and let's see if we can total up the points for what was a very frenetic 40 laps of racing. So, if we look at our results on the board, it was indeed a win for Michael Stoy in the Brabham BMW. Becky Eli Clark managed to get home in second, always in the action, never far away from a car behind or a car in front. That Lotus Renault seemed like it was suffering in the lower speed corners, but was able to pull away on the straight. So Vito Martino comes away with third place on the road. Maybe feels a little bit aggrieved that he could have done a little bit better. That was a costly collision with Eli Clark in the end. Eli Clark did get a little bit squirrely in that final turn. Gathered it up, and unfortunately Martino went for a gap. Unfortunately that gap had a Renault in it. So fourth place, Marco. I've struggled with this name all evening long. Sal Valaggio is in fourth. The Renault of Sal Valaggio in fourth. So a good finish for Marco. Just looking down on my spreadsheet to make sure that I get everybody on the points table. So we possibly will have everybody scoring today. So Johan Nieuwenhof in the Renault in 5th, so a good finish for the Renaults, 4th and 5th. Matthias Bogle, we saw that him dropping down the order, possibly got involved in that accident in the start where we saw an ATS go completely sideways, but managed to get back up to 6th place, but not out of the action. We normally saw either the Eli Clark Lotus or the Bogle Renault always in the action. And then a couple of laps down, we see Joseph Muller pulling that Benetton to 7th place. And then we have Schuerkamp taking that Tyrrell to the last car on the grid, or in fact their last finisher. So that's 8th place. And 9th on the road was Michael Volker in the Williams Honda, unfortunately, may have he may have not got points for this round because you did need to be classified at 50%. So we'll leave that up to the stewards to decide. So we have our top 8 points finishers, and I will get those generated, and then we can see where the points stand. So we're using a little bit of a different point system for this series. It's not the conventional point series for Formula 1. Now, if I've done this correctly, we should see the points standings. There we go. So I've not got the rounds filled in for round 1, so I'll have to get those to you, which was at Harama. So there's our points as we stand. So an absolute blinder from Michael Stoy today, playing it safe, I would think, and then coming good at the end. But we've got more rounds of this action to come. More rounds. So we've done 2 of them. We were at Rama and then Buenos Aires. We did tonight. Now we're going to be going to Monaco. So we've been taking the 1980s tracks. It won't make much difference to Monaco because the layout has stayed pretty much the same. But we'll join us back here on the 30th of March for some action at Monaco. Then the 80s version of Silverstone. A couple of different chicanes you've got to be wary of at Silverstone. But it's back in the days when it was nearly flat out. So 13th of April for that. And then Hockenheim, the big long straights of Hockenheim. Drafting down the straight, it's going to be really fun on the 27th of April. Then we got Monza, Italy on the 11th of May, and then Adelaide on the 8th of June. So, thank you for joining me for what was a very action-packed broadcast with Sim Racers Revival. 40 laps around Buenos Aires. Hopefully you can join us for the next round of this championship, because it's touted to be a very action-packed. If this round is anything to go by, I'm going to be out of breath and lacking energy by the end of it. But thank you for watching, everybody, if you have been, and I'll see you on track next time.